especial porque viene el primer episodio en inglés y tengo un invitado también que va a ser muy divertido y muy especial. Así que, bueno, el episodio será en inglés y nada, empezamos ya. Okay, so we start. Well, hello, Graham.
Buenas tardes.
We can tell a little bit about how we met.
Yes.
It was from an exchange in English and in Spanish.
Yeah, intercambio.
Like we do in Castalla.
Yeah.
And we met like last year, I think, no? 1 year ago.
Yes.
More
Yes.
or
I've
less.
been in that group for about nearly 3 years now.
Okay.
But yes, I think you and me, we met about a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a great experience for me, yeah, because being able to talk all the weeks. Yeah.
Yes, and it was
so
it
good.
was a bit of a relief for me because your English it was very, very good even when you started. So it was quite nice for me to have somebody there who, if I
Who
couldn't
fully
quite
understand you.
fully understand what the other Spanish people were saying, I could ask you. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, and it was also great that well, I told you sometime that you make the effort to speak Spanish also. Yeah. And that's
Yes,
good.
yeah, well, that's the idea really. I mean, my biggest weakness of all in this learning a foreign language is the listening, because ordinarily in my life my hearing is not very, very good, and of course Spanish people who, when they speak, to my mind, they speak very, very fast, and so sometimes an entire sentence can just sound like one big long word.
And you have to know the meaning. Yeah, it's hard. So I want to start with asking you how about your life in the UK. How was so different from now that you live here in Spain?
Yes, yeah, good question. I think when you're born in a country and you just live your life, everything is perfectly normal. That is your normality.
It's
And
all you know. Yeah.
it's you only realise how different it is when you move to another country and start to try and communicate with well, the natives of that country that you've moved to. So, but yeah, I shall I tell you a bit about my life just very briefly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm 66 years old now. I got married when. I got married in 1981. We've got 2 daughters. We've got 4 grandchildren, and I retired. Yes, nearly 4 years ago now. Took early retirement. But yeah, life in Britain was all I can say. It was normal. I've been in telecommunications most of my life. I was an engineer climbing telegraph poles and putting wires up.
Yeah.
I even I don't know if you can remember, but in the old films you would see old switchboards in businesses with cords, and they're called doll's eye indicators, and I could repair those as well. It was a great job, and then I got into.
And have you seen the like the evolution? Have you
absolutely
experimented the whole
in
evolution?
fact, I joined at the right time because everything was it was all electromechanical in those days, and then once I'd got trained on all of that and I was repairing faults, suddenly there was a revolution actually, and like integrated circuits came out, and so instead of the old type switchboards, you then had things that were almost computers, but they were all central, computer processor controlled, and so I was right at the leading edge of all that. So that
And it was an easy transition for you?
It was an easy transition for me because when I started in telecoms, I was 22 years old, so I was young enough to learn, and I really felt sorry for the guys who,
were older at that time.
Were in the 50s and the 60s because they really didn't want to know about the new stuff, and they just let these Johnny-come-latelys like me get on with it.
Yeah.
So that was good, and then I got promoted into management and that was okay. In fact, I did enjoy it, but eventually I saw an opportunity to basically pay my mortgage off, and so in 1995 I took voluntary redundancy, and I just thought to myself, this is a chance to get rid of a mortgage and be able to have a bit more freedom. And I just backed myself that I would be able to find another job in telecoms, and sure as that, I actually took a job with an American company, which then got took over, and I worked for an Anglo-American company. These are all big blue chip companies. And then eventually there seems to have been a few recessions in my life, and that was the first recession that I remember. And basically I knew that I needed to move on, and so I joined a very small telecoms company, and I had to go at sales. So I was selling business systems then to other businesses. So I did that.
Same sector, but another job.
Same sector, but a completely different market, because instead of being a big blue chip company, this was a privately owned small telecoms company that just worked locally. And then I worked there for a good 7 or 8 years, and then the recession of 2000, no, it wasn't, I get mixed up with
2008?
this. 2008? Was it 2008? Do you know, I get mixed up with this, but yes, I think it was. And 12, 18, 19, 20. No. Do you know?
It was before?
It could have been before, but basically, in 2008, I think. Yes, that's right. In 2008, that company went under with the recession.
Okay.
And so I took a
like
job.
Many others.
Yes, like many others. And then I took a complete change of tack with my career, and I had a big history of doing voluntary work in charities. That was just voluntary in my own time, and so did my wife actually. But yeah, in I think it was 2008, I actually took over a charity in Leeds, which is where I'm from. It's in the north of England, Yorkshire, and I ran a charity that helped recovering alcoholics and recovering drug addicts. And I'm not an addict myself, I'm not an alcoholic, but I had the right qualifications that the board of directors were looking for. They wanted somebody who'd done a lot of voluntary charity work, and somebody who had problems in his life but had sort of learned to manage them, and etc. So I came through that and
learn to deal with them.
Yeah, and those 12 years it was the worst paid job I've ever had in terms of money, but
the more enjoyable.
It was the job satisfaction was incredible. I did go to quite a number of funerals, which was heartbreaking. Yeah. But overall there was a 60-odd% success rate, and I'm still in touch with many of the clients who have now got their lives back. I know women that have now reconnected with their children that were estranged from them when they were addicts, and men who had never had jobs and now they've got jobs. And
intense stories for the good and for the bad.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesus, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because you met them like in a very a strange or time of their lives. Yeah,
absolutely.
And it could go both ways. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that was stark. That was really in your face. You really did know that they could go.
And did you get to not take it took it personally sometimes, or?
That's the theory. Always, that's the theory.
How to manage that? I think it's
in that line
difficult.
of work, but I'm afraid. It was a small charity, and it was all about relationships, really. It was all about building relationships and trust and things like that, and we talked about some very, very deep things, and you cannot help but be affected, and so yes, it did affect me, Affected me in a good way many times, but yeah, there were some heartbreaks as well.
But do you think that it was a trait that you had before, or it's something you developed for that job?
That's very interesting because I really did not know what I was going into, and I remember sitting there in the first week, and I'd been told that I would be expected to run the entire organisation at that time because it was running out of money, and I actually wrote the curriculum that they've used for the last 12 years when I was there. I wrote the curriculum. I did the vast majority of the teaching, but I trained up a lot of clients to become volunteers for that charity, and later some of them actually took paid work for the charity as well. Yeah.
I think we have talked about this before, that you have to to be in a certain way of personality to be able to work there, because you, as you said, you go through a lot of bad situations or difficult situations.
Definitely.
And also you have to, I think, you to have a willingness to help people. And
absolutely, it is about it's about making emotional contact with people and trying to understand them properly and on a real level. You cannot fake yourself. The clientele would see through that straight away, and so I had to expose my weaknesses to them just as much, because really we had a spirit really of we're all in this together, and that's why it worked, really. That's why it worked, because there's a lot of trust, and as the charity went on and as the years rolled by, we were able to point out to new clients, we could point out other people that had come through the programme and were very successful, and that's actually the reason that I wanted ex-clients to actually take on the management of the charity.
Yeah. And maybe at that time you were the only figure of
for the
support
for them. For the first couple of, the first 18 months to 2 years, I definitely was. And then I had a friend who was looking for a more meaningful job, and I said, I can't just offer you a job, you've got to pass a board interview. He did that, and he had a lot of good years with us as well, so he did a lot of work as well for us. And then after he retired, that's when I started to really implement this idea of promoting from within, from the clients. Yeah.
Okay. But they have to be there for a certain amount of time?
Oh yeah, it's quite a commitment for the clients. What they were signing up for was, and it didn't cost them any money, but what they were signing up for was to be totally clean and sober, because the charity was a treatment program. It wasn't a detoxification centre. There was nothing medical about the charity. Okay. So we insisted that they were clean and sober, and that the whole point was that we were teaching them different techniques and methods and ways to think and behave, so that they didn't need to resort to going back to alcohol or going back to drugs. Yeah.
Like to be able to solve their own problems. And to be independent.
And it was a safe environment, but they had to come for like three hours a day, every day, Monday to Friday, for a full year. And some of them, even though they did the full year, they would say, "Can I have another 6 months?" And we used to say, "Yeah." There were other people that relapsed, and so they left. But they kept coming back because they could tell that there was something about the program that
like they sense they belong to
that worked.
To that
yes,
group.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And it was always like a talk, or with them. And
what we did was the curriculum that I'm talking about. I would make sure that any group, because it was a rolling program, people didn't just all enroll at the same time. People, everybody had a different start date. So I made sure that every day we had a different subject to talk about, and people like me and later on the staff, we would introduce a subject, get them going, and then it was like a group. We worked in groups, but in addition to that, the office door was always open, so quite often we had one-to-one, very deep private discussions,
like more
well.
Personal.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a bit of everything, but it worked, and I saw no reason to change it because it was working. Yeah.
And can you describe some of the topics that you treat?
Okay, so it's difficult to do justice to it really, because I know we've got limited time and you don't want to hear all about this, but it was things like recognising typical thinking patterns and recognising typical behaviour patterns that people have, that we have, and that we recognise in other people, and then trying to work out what we used to use the phrase tools of recovery. So we gave them lots of sort of tools of recovery. Now I can't give you a long list of that, but it was really more about them asking themselves the right questions to ask themselves, so that they could see.
Apply them to their own lives.
Yes, exactly. And very often we can only see what's going wrong in our own lives when we observe some other people that have got similar problems.
It's easier.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well. I'm free to give them a plug, but basically I also insisted that all the clients, in addition to coming to our program, that in their private time, say on an evening, they would go to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, because although we weren't part of those, they're called fellowships. We wouldn't be allowed to be partners or anything like that. But I could see that what was being talked about in the AA and NA meetings was broadly the stuff that we were teaching as well.
It was a part of the process also to go to these meetings. And
and it also made the clients take personal responsibility and have some commitment and some discipline in their very, very, what would you say, confused, chaotic and tortured lives that they had. And that was another thing. You could see somebody walk through the door on day one, very dishevelled, very chaotic in their thinking, very just broken is really the phrase. But you could see them like 12 months later, transformed, completely transformed.
Dramatic changes,
but dramatic changes on a daily basis. That's the key really, is just little improvements each day. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really, no regrets, even though it wasn't very well paid.
No, I think it's an interesting part of your life, because I haven't met anyone before that work in this kind of job. And I'm so concerned and about everyone's life, how they turn to the bad or the good, and it depends on the habits and on the familiar situation you grow up. And
yes, and it's also that alcohol and drugs offer a way out. That's the attraction. And I think I explained this phrase to you the other day, that many of them would say, I just needed to get out of my head, and that's a common
it's
phrase.
A way to stop the thinking in your head.
So in other words, they are escaping from reality, they are escaping from their responsibilities, and so that again is a good starting point for writing a curriculum.
They are overwhelmed by the situation.
Absolutely, and then fear and panic sets in, and of course every time that if they relapsed or anything like that, that would just exacerbate their original problems, and they would be they wouldn't be starting at the same point. They would be starting at a lower point each time. And there is a commonly used phrase there that we used to ask people: do you think you've reached your rock bottom now? And some of them, they had incredible journeys before they could actually start to climb out of that rock bottom.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, but I want to talk about other things also. Well, I want to change the subject to talk about the process to move to Spain.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about that.
That's quite a long process, but I'll speed it up. 15, 16...
How you made your decision?
Yeah,
maybe,
so 19 years ago, there was a trend amongst a lot of my fellow Britons to find a place in the sun. That's actually the title of
Look for the sun.
that's a title of a TV program in Britain, and it's really about Britain.
They travel to different places.
So British people would go to France or Greece or Turkey or Spain, of course, and
Italy,
Portugal.
maybe.
It's Italy as well, and just find somewhere that they could invest some money and buy a house, and of course use it for holidays. And that's what we did for 15 very, very happy years. I had friends back in England saying, why don't you go somewhere else? Why do you always go there? And I said, well, I'm getting to know the place, and I'm I just like the culture and everything, and I feel at home as soon as I get there. So that was what we originally got the house for, and then we started to think, well, it would be nice to retire early at some time, and maybe retire and move from England to Spain. And after all, we were in the EU, and why not? So that was the dream, and then two things conspired. We had the
complicate things.
We had the pandemic, which prevented us from getting over to Spain, and we had Brexit, and Brexit for us, it meant that a clock was ticking, because you cannot start the application process to get residency.
A limited time,
there's a limited time. You have to live in Spain in order to start that process. And so basically we were the first people to jump on a plane from Leeds to get to Alicante. I think it was June the 28th when the plane started
after the first
to fly.
Lockdown. Right after.
Yeah.
And it was you mentioned something that it's I value, because a lot of people that came here to Spain, they don't bother themselves to adapt to the culture or to know the way of living. They try to make the same life, but in a different part.
There's a
but you and Bernie, you adapt to the culture.
There is a phrase that and I guess this is typical of a lot of nationalities, that when a group of, in this case, Britons move to a country like Spain, they take with them their own culture, and they create a kind of in terms of the English, a little England. And so that's actually what the urbanisation that I live on was like quite a few years ago. But it's changing now, and probably because of Brexit. It's also a different generation that are there now. And but for my wife, Bernie, and myself, we decided. I mean, you've talked to Bernie, and her Spanish is much better than mine, but I'm catching her up little by little. But you've got to learn the language. I think it's better if you learn the language. And Bernie and I feel a lot richer, and I'm not just saying this, Jesus, just because you're Spanish and just because most of your listeners will be Spanish, but I am so glad that we're starting to get Spanish friends, and it doesn't matter really, because people are people. But once you actually start to learn the language and you start to have proper conversations, that's when you realise that people are people. There are loads of idiots in England.
We are not so different.
There's lots of idiots in Spain, but there are also some lovely people in Spain and in England. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's so good for me is like that too, because if I don't speak English, I'm not able to communicate with you, for example.
Yeah.
And for me, it opens up a whole new world, because you can communicate with a lot of people, millions of people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so good, and it's true that the language is a source of connecting.
Definitely. Without the language, you're very limited in your connection. Yeah. We used to do a lot of smiling when we were on holiday.
like faking to understand everything.
Yeah.
And also, I think on the other hand that I'm talking about British people that came here to Spain, but it's the same for a lot of Spanish people that travel to live abroad.
Yes.
In this case, England.
Yeah.
And they only surround themselves by Spanish people.
Yeah, but there is.
I think it's a normal reaction for everyone, but you have to make the effort, in my opinion, to approach to other people.
I agree. I would also add though that back in Leeds, where I'm from, when I used to go to work, which was in the city centre, I could hear lots of Spanish voices as I was travelling through the city, and. Most of them were young people who were working, so obviously they'd made a massive effort to learn to speak English, because I cannot imagine, even now I've got quite a bit of Spanish, but I don't think I could hold a proper job down. Do you understand what I mean? Because there'd be so many things that I wouldn't understand. So unless it was a manual job, I could do that, I guess.
But you mean a job in Spanish? The whole job in Spanish.
I don't think I could do a job in like say work in an office in Spain. I don't think I could do it because I don't have enough English. Don't have enough Spanish. But obviously
if you have to deal with people, it's harder.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe you have to reach a certain level of the language.
Yeah.
And talking about the Spanish, how was your process to learning Spanish?
Right, okay, so I did go to school. It was like a voluntary school in Castilla, and I did 6 months. I did that when I was still working in England, because what I did was I was like working for a month, and then I was taking a month off to come and live in Spain for a month. The idea of this, it was like a transition for the staff. So the staff had to get used to running the place without me, because this was like a succession plan, is what I called it, so that they could get used to that. And
my father did something similar when he retired.
Right, brilliant.
He worked, I think, for 1 year, but not all the days.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of another worker.
I think it's important, and also
it was learning to do their job.
Yeah, and also for me it was an advantage, because some people are shocked when they retire, from being very, very busy to suddenly you can get up at whatever time.
They face uncertainty suddenly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, excuse me, it was an easy transition because of that. So what was the question? I've forgotten the question.
How you're learning? How you started learning Spanish?
Yeah. So I went to the school
to Castilla
for 6 months, and then COVID hit, so we couldn't come out here. So once we managed to permanently live out here, I did another 6 months at a school.
Okay.
But I'll be honest with you, I'd learned a lot of words, but I didn't know much grammar.
Yeah.
you know, because it was like A1 was the level, and
Mainly vocabulary.
yeah, mainly vocabulary. Yeah, so I was a little bit disappointed, but and what really triggered everything was I went to a cafe in O'Neill, and this young lady, the waitress, she was listening to me trying to talk Spanish, and she was smiling and laughing and correcting me and what have you. And then I asked her in Spanish, you know, do you speak any English? And suddenly she started to speak English, but she was a little bit embarrassed, and she said that she couldn't really speak it. But I thought, my goodness, she's better at English than I am at Spanish. So I asked her, where did you learn this? And she suddenly said Duolingo, which meant nothing to me at the time. But when I told my wife, she said, oh yeah, it's an application on your computer. And I thought, I've got to get that. So I got it. And I think as I'm talking to you now, Jesus, I think I'm on 980 something days continuous.
Days in a row,
yeah. But of course, sometimes it's only 10 minutes that I will do an exercise
it's quick.
in.
Yeah.
But no, each day, every day, I do it every day. Even at Christmas, even like when we went technically on holiday the other week with in fact I had my grandsons helping me with that. An exercise that should take 10 minutes took 25 minutes, but that's because they can speak Spanish.
I tried Duolingo, but so many years ago. Yeah.
But that was just one part to answer your question, was Duolingo and the school. Because both of those were important and still important, but also
your Spanish friends. Also.
We developed a lot of friends at the pool, the community pool, because we're there for 2 months, and because of the grandkids, we're there every day. So we met a lot of Spanish people, and you know, because I think the population of the pool now is about more than 80%
mainly Spanish.
Yeah. So that was an important thing, and of course then I've been part of 2 groups of intercambio meetings as well, and that's, I mean, this one that you're in with us, it's this is the longest one we've been in. It's really, really good. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have talked about this before, that Spanish, to start from scratch with Spanish, it's more difficult than English, because the verbal tenses
yeah. And I think
the masculine and the feminine,
absolutely. And I think I've shared this with you before, that the type of education that I had in England was in the 1970s, and it was called progressive education, and it was not the sort of education that suited my personality type. So we didn't learn things like grammar. We just didn't. I mean, obviously we know about grammar because we're English speaking, and I've got a good plenty of conversation, and I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's I didn't know the technicalities of language, and I had no interest whatsoever in learning a foreign language at that time. So all of this is good now.
But to me, it's more important, like to build phrases and to have vocabulary than the verbal tenses.
Absolutely.
And even in English, when I speak in English, I try to focus on the message. I don't think too much about the verbal.
Yeah. So my one of my daughters gave me a good tip, and she said, if you get stuck in a conversation, just say one of these Spanish words like bueno or entonces, or
like
something,
a connector,
something like that, a connecting word, so that I can then think of a different way of saying what I want to say, and that works if I can think quickly enough.
I think that is so important, because we tend to translate totally from Spanish to English, or
yes,
or the other side, and you have to focus on what you want to say and say it with the words you have in this language.
Exactly. A kind of an aside to this is a few years ago, my football team, the team that I support, Leeds United, we had an Argentine manager, Marcelo Bielsa.
I know him.
He had no English, or he said he never did any interviews in English. I think he possibly did understand.
He coached it here in Spain also.
Yes,
I think for the Bilbao.
Yes, he did. Yeah. Anyway, I think they call him El Loco.
Yeah.
And he is a bit. But I loved listening to him being interviewed, because he all his interviews were in Spanish, and every single sentence he would go bueno.
Bueno.
And then he would go yo creo que, and I use yo creo que all the time.
Yeah, you can use these words to think more time about it. Yeah. It's so good. I love learning languages and the process.
Yeah.
And to me it works when you try to when you begin to discover the culture also.
Oh, absolutely.
Like maybe some things that you like in your country, you turn it to the Spanish ones. And for me it worked perfectly, because I love movies and singers and music in general. And I started to watch interviews in English or in French of them, and it's like I struggle more. I make a bigger effort because it's something I like.
Absolutely, I think that's a key thing, is you've got to talk about something that you're interested in, and I think like that was one of the connections with you and me, was you were very hungry to understand, and let's not get into this now, but you were very hungry to understand different perspectives, British perspectives on politics and economic strategies and things like that, and I thought, wow, this is great. I've got a Spanish friend now who wants to take the conversation more deeper than how are you, ¿qué tal, and all that stuff.
I love deeper conversations. That's one of the things I started this podcast. Because normally nowadays we don't get to talk like for more than maybe 5 minutes with someone. And more superficial matters.
And superficial conversations are great for me at the moment with my level of Spanish, but gradually I'm getting deeper and deeper, and well, with you we've talked about all sorts of things, so that's fantastic.
That's great. And also I think that it's so important to have an open mind when you don't know something or understand something. You have to, maybe in my case, I ask about some things in your country, and as I get the response, I don't judge it. I like to try to understand to adapt to that reality.
But even though you say you don't judge it,
somehow you do.
I get the impression that you and I are kind of, here's a good English idiom saying, singing. We both sing from the same hymn sheet. Do you understand that?
Hymn sheet is from a bird, or
it's like in church, a hymn that you sing.
Like the choir. The song.
You've got it. Yeah. So singing from the same hymn sheet means we're in agreement.
Like we are on the same page.
We're on. That's another good saying as well. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I think we talk about mainly everything, but
you asked me about. I tell you one thing that you asked me about. You asked me about culture shocks. No shocks as such, really, but it's funny things. It's like a lot of Spanish people will say to me, "What do you eat?" and what time do you go to bed, and what time do you eat, when's your main meal? So I explained all that from a British point of view, but I was equally curious about Spanish eating habits, because they always used to talk about, we don't eat dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. No, that's unheard of in Britain.
So late.
That's
for
way
Britain.
too late for Britons. But there is a difference as well, because although you call it la cena, dinner, is that really your main meal of the day, or is your main meal more at 2 o'clock?
Mainly the main meal is the the lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
L-
at
which-
2 p.m.
Which is
maybe.
why you have menu del dia and things like
Yeah.
that, because that makes more sense, because to an English person, dinner has become more Americanized. The Americans eat dinner 6, 7, 8 o'clock.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Britain's now, because working hours got longer, and so we eat a main meal as soon as we get home, really. So it could be 6 o'clock, it could be 6:30, whatever.
Yeah.
But so dinner is like your big dinner. But I think that what you've just said, the Spanish eat their lunch is their bigger meal, even though they called la cena, the dinner, at night.
Okay.
So yeah, and
But I think it was mainly because normally in Britain they work from 9 to 5. So they have the
yeah, we have a very short
their meal,
lunch hour.
a
Yes,
short
yeah.
time.
In fact,
and here we normally come to our home
yeah,
and we eat a bigger dinner.
That's very different, because I wouldn't dream of trying to get home, because the traffic is so bad from where I used to work. And,
in big cities it's so complicated.
Yeah, and also we would just I would just go and buy a sandwich or take a sandwich with me, and I would eat it at my desk. That's really what we would do for lunch. So you don't really get. I think dinner hour is a misnomer now. It's probably a dinner half hour.
Yeah, and maybe if you have dinner early, you can go to bed. Well, you can eat more and go to bed 3 or 4 hours after that.
Exactly, yeah.
And here we eat, and maybe in 1 or 2 hours we go to bed.
Yeah.
So
and
it's normally a little quantity.
And these cultures change, because you're living here in a hot climate country, whereas in England it's a very cold climate, really. Lots of rain and all the rest of it. I mean, we do get summers, and sometimes the summers are quite hot, and occasionally we'll have a news headline that'll say London was hotter than Madrid today or whatever. But so we're a cold climate country, and that's why we drink a lot of coffee and tea all the time. You know, it just keeps you warm, I guess. Whereas
that surprised me, because I've never drank a coffee after 2 p.m.
No, that's
drink it at 5 p.m. It's so crazy for me.
This is a good example. When I arrived at your house today and you said, "Do I want a drink?" and you've offered me water, which is great. Thank you. If it was in England, I would be offering you coffee or tea, and if you said no, I'd think, "What's wrong with you?" You know.
He's not a real British.
No. So that's so I've had no real culture shocks, but I in fact it's the other way around. I'm enjoying finding out the different ways of life that people have. I'm not sort of, don't want to sound like I'm creeping here, but I do believe that Spain, in the community that we're in, because I know this area where you live as well, that it's very family orientated. And it reminds me of Britain when I was a young boy, because we live next to our relatives, etc. But as I've grown older and older, like I've got one daughter who lives in Cadiz, and I've got another daughter who lives in London. Now London's 200 miles away from Leeds, so that's a big move. But to move to Spain like Amy did as well, but
I think here is different because we live in smaller areas. But when you go to big cities, it's more like you said, like in London.
I think also there was a big push in the generation that my children were brought up in to go to university no matter what. And of course in England you go to a university that is good at the specialism that you are after. So my daughters did French and Spanish and Portuguese and German,
Mm.
and they moved to Newcastle, which is another 100 miles north of us.
Okay.
So families tend to get split up through, because then again children then tend to locate where their university is, or well,
Yeah.
my girls didn't in the end, but that has been a trend. Whereas I think like are the majority of students at Alicante University,
Yeah.
they would live around here normally.
Near here, yeah.
yeah.
It's something like in USA that they tend to turn 18 and go to the place to live abroad. Well, to the place they're going to study.
Exactly.
Normally, so far away from where they grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think in Spain the family. So yeah, normally it's so
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Don't lose it. That's really important. I think that's one of the. This is one of the things you can reflect on as you get older, and especially if you move away from what is home. You know, I mean, I can be very critical of Britain in many ways, but it's my homeland. It's I'll still always cheer for England, well, in football and other sports, but I'm not wildly nationalistic, you know, because people are people, and you know, I think the world, rather than building walls, we need to build bridges, and this is why, you know, I'm very open about my views on Brexit. I just think it's stupid.
It's like to close borders.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, to
No.
close the borders. But I think born in a country, it's so arbitrary is the word. It's
Yeah.
like you don't choose to
you
born
don't choose,
in a
exactly. Having said that,
so if you grow up there, you have
yeah.
like a little attachment to that place, but you don't choose to born that.
I'll tell you something really funny. Well, I think it's funny. I would be about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and my mum and dad bought me a globe of the world, and in those days, the globes had the empires.
Yeah.
So the British Empire was in red, and so there was all this part of the globe that was red, and my dad explained to me that this was British. It was the British Empire, and I said, "So where's England? Where's England?" And he pointed to this little island, and I thought, "Is that it?"
Only that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think maybe that they were a little island. They have more. They were more hungry to conquer different territories. So
Yeah.
I think maybe it's one of the reasons.
Yeah,
for
and
that.
also you've also empire and conquering is not a good thing. However, can I give an example of this? Yeah, I think like in say India, at least the British left them with a bit more infrastructure. Having said that, they did some awful things as well. But I'm getting political now.
Yeah.
But
I think it had shaped our world.
Yes.
Like the empires. Yeah. Because in Latin America, they don't. Well, they. I'm struggling with the verbal tenses. They didn't speak Spanish if it wasn't for the conqueror, for the Spanish Empire.
Exactly.
And for the British Empire, I think the English, it wouldn't be like a global language if it wasn't for that.
Oh, absolutely. You're right about that. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Totally. And do you adapt your routines to the Spanish ones, or as you were talking about before the differences?
So in July and August especially, and sometimes in June, we have a siesta in the afternoon because I get it. It's very, very hot here.
Yeah.
So
And there is a lot of hours of sun, so you like to have more
It's
time. in
interesting
the
actually,
night.
Jesus, because you won't understand this, I don't think, but in England you could have a really hot day, and I mean a hot day in say July or August, And by 7 o'clock at night, it's time to go inside because, well, maybe a bit later than that, because it's not the same sort of, I don't know how to put it. Over here, it's lighter for a start off because of the clock changes and stuff like that. But the evenings in Spain just seem to. There's you can go out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night without any, without feeling like you're going out at night. It's very different, and in fact that was a bit of a shock actually. Was that you'll go into the local town that we're near, and you'll go there at 2 o'clock, and there's nobody about in the streets. But you go there, if it's the summer, you go there at 11 o'clock at night, and it is absolutely heaving with people, and they're eating in the streets and everything, the big tables and these fiestas that they have. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's a great way to live. I love it.
I think we are more extroverts. Yeah, extroverted people.
But
normally.
You definitely, food seems to be a common theme when I speak to Spanish people. They love to talk about food, and I don't blame you because I like Spanish food.
What's your favorite dish?
Oh, right. I like paella, which is a good thing to say when we're living in Valencia. But yeah, I mean, all the menú del días that I've tried, I've really liked. But also we'll have meals off the a la carte menu as well, and very very rarely will I say, oh, I didn't like that. It's the cooking is different as well. Lots of olive oil and garlic and everything, but it's all good stuff. Yeah.
Here we have the joke of criticizing English food.
Oh, go on, tell me.
So we say that it's not it's everything butter and and fish and chips and it's the little thing we know.
I had a friend called
and even English food, it's not English because it's Indian or it's not mainly from Britain.
The question is, what is British food? Having said that, we took a group of Spanish people that they're friends from where we live, and we took them to a British pub. And we had Sunday roast, Sunday dinner, and the English waitress said, "Wow," she says, "all these Spanish people," and there wasn't a dirty plate. They'd eaten everything, so it can't be that bad.
They cleared their dishes.
They cleared their dishes. But the other thing I was going to tell you just then was I had a friend who his father, I don't know how old he must have been, in his 70s or something like that. And he went to England and he just complained bitterly because he said, mantequilla, siempre mantequilla.
Because I here we have the olive oil like as a standard for every recipe.
There again, you see, media tostada con aceite. I've not said that. Aceite. We would never eat that in England. Never. It's just not an option. But many times me and my wife will get up and I'll say, "Have you had breakfast?" And she'll say, "No." "Shall we go out?" And we'll go out and we'll have that with tomato or something like that. And it's become normal for us now. So I'm converting.
That's good, yeah. And there is an English breakfast, no? It's called...
Yeah, there is such a thing as an English breakfast and a Scottish breakfast and an Irish breakfast, and it's just a lot of bacon, sausage and eggs and beans and tomatoes.
Yeah.
And it's not very healthy.
I normally
it's all fried.
I normally have eggs for breakfast.
Ah, right.
Now,
okay, yeah. Good.
Because I think that here also we are used to breakfast, maybe some sugar, like
cereal.
Yeah, sugar cereal, or I don't know how to call it, or a muffin or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not so healthy.
No.
So healthy.
No.
And I'm so concerned about food, about my diet, and I try to take care of it. Yeah.
Good.
And Well, I want to talk also about your time in Brazil, if you want to.
Oh wow, yeah.
Have you been to other countries besides from Brazil, or only?
Brazil is the only South American country that I've visited. Obviously, I think I told you that we'd been to United States as well, New York, but yeah, and I've been to loads of countries in Europe. I've even been to the Lebanon as well. That was
Lebanon,
an interesting holiday. But
And what was your favorite country?
So
and then we go to the Brazil experience.
my favourite country is Spain. That's why we live here to visit. Yeah, and we're looking forward.
You are trying to win the listeners.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's seriously. Because Cadiz is really nice. Granada. I've been to Sevilla. We're going to Valencia very, very shortly. A few more weeks. I want to go to Barcelona. I obviously should really go to Madrid as well. So we want to do those things. Oh, I went to Jaén as well. So that was good.
Yeah.
But coming back to your question about Brazil, so my wife ran a charity for inner city children in our city in Leeds, and it's a long story which I'll cut really short. Basically, we gathered some connections in Brazil in a big city called Belo Horizonte, and that's an interior city. There's no beach or anything like that. It's miles away from the coast, and in Belo they have children that just live on the street. It's quite. I think Brazil is what you might call a second world country. Do you understand? You know, there's first world.
Now it's evolving, but
yes,
I think
it is
still
evolving.
remains.
But there's this massive divide of the rich and the poor in Brazil.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say I'm seeing that happening back in Britain. I'm seeing it all over the world now. There's a trend towards that. But Brazil,
I think it happens also because it's a big country.
Yes,
so
Brazil has awful poverty. So yeah, we we spent most of our time in favelas, which was an eye opener to somebody who's been brought up in the United Kingdom. And it poses questions. I don't want to get too deeply philosophical here, but
you're allowed to if you want.
On my very last visit to a favela in Belo Horizonte, and I'd been there 3 times, 3 different visits. I walked. We had a carta blanca, which simply meant we wouldn't get bothered by the bad boys. But we looked very different. I experienced the other side of racism. We were the only white people, and I walked around that favela on my last day before we had to go to the airport, and I was just like thinking quite deeply, what would I do if I had the same brain and had been born here in this favela? What would I do with my life? What job would I get? Because unemployment is unbelievable there.
Yeah, how your life have changed dramatically.
Yeah. And I'd been introduced to the drug dealers that live up the hill, and I saw how they lived and everything. And
they were running the place.
They run the place, and I couldn't think of a solution of what I could do, and then I realised that yes, that's why there are drug dealers. That's why they are these gangsters that are running the place, because it's a fast track to, first of all, feeding your kids.
Like, it's not justified, but it's understandable.
It's not justifiable, absolutely, but it's understandable. That's a good phrase. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And you were there 3 times, you said?
I went 3 times, and I think my wife's been 11 times, because she was running a charity that was helping them. They built a house in the favela, a nice house for a lady that was, well, basically her and her children were living underneath a tree when my wife first met her. So yeah.
And you were raising funds for them?
Yes, my wife has raised a lot of funds for them over the years, and I think she's got to the point now where they've even been buying laptop computers so that they've got like a proper study room now, so that kids after school they can use these computers. Yeah.
Okay, I have like a final question. I want to ask you. Well, I have someone in mind. I think Bernie would be great for the podcast. I would love to have to have her here. But besides from that, do you recommend me anyone that you think it would be suitable for the podcast, or it has a good story to tell? Someone you know.
That's put me on the spot.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
I think if I were you, I would have a pre-recorded, a pre-conversation with Kate, because she's led a different life, a different lifestyle. So she would give you another perspective. You remember Kate, yeah?
Kate, where from?
She was on the first Intercambio, and she's on this one, but she's been ill just recently.
I'm thinking about him.
Yeah.
Okay, Kate. Okay,
yeah, you do remember.
Okay.
I can see you remembered it, you know. Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I will talk to her.
Good one.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for asking me. I was a little bit worried at first, but no, I think.
And have you been comfortable?
I've been very comfortable, Jesus. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you to you. Bueno, a todos los que escucháis, gracias por escuchar y nada, nos vemos en el siguiente. Chao.